So exposing these vestiges of the corporate press, I think, is particularly important. Hence, here we go again. Some ABC News staffers fumed at management for keeping a tight lid on coverage of the settlement. It was front page news everywhere, yet ABC doesn't report on itself, the source lamented. Of course, it's a conflict of interest. You could make a statement on your own behalf, that's fine, but reporting on yourself, conflict of interest. 3 sources told the Post that morale is down after a series of layoffs in all departments.
In this video, Tim Pool calls out the corporate left for its constant lying. Tim Pool discusses the legacy media's inability to cope with Donald Trump's win and reacts to a clip of Scott Jennings wrecking a bunch of crybabies on CNN. With that, let's watch Tim Pool justifiably roast woke CNN and its gaggle of woke idiots.
From the New York Post, ABC News anchor George Stephanopoulos is apoplectic and humiliated by their settlement. Stephanopoulos, who claimed Trump had raped E. Jean Carroll during an interview with Nancy Mace, was particularly upset about being forced to apologize. Aw, well, you know, them's the breaks. Another source told the Post that George is defiant. A third source said Stephanopoulos is a very guarded person. His circle of trust is so small, and a lot of them don't work at ABC anymore. The first insider added the host of This Week had recently signed a contract extension with Disney-owned ABC News, though the source did not disclose the terms of the deal. The former President Bill Clinton aide had kept a low profile since the settlement, a $15 million donation to a presidential foundation and museum for Trump, and another $1 million for Trump's attorney's fees was announced Saturday. He has deactivated his X account. Wow. My friends, the victories, my friends. Disney announced that they're pulling some gender ideology storyline from some show they're making. Nobody wants this stuff. ABC News is shelling out the big bucks. I hope when they make the museum for Trump, it says this museum paid for by exposing the lies of the corporate press. You know, I've been saying for some time, I don't really know why we talk about these people anymore. They're not particularly prominent. But to be fair, Stephanopoulos still does get a lot of views, especially in the key demo. While we can make fun of CNN and MSNBC, I do find it interesting that when it comes to the ratings, those are the big players everyone cares about. When you look at like TV Newser, where I usually pull up the ratings, you got Fox, MSNBC, CNN. But what about ABC Nightly News? They do pretty dang well. Plus, their podcast does pretty dang well. So exposing these vestiges of the corporate press, I think, is particularly important. Hence, here we go again. Some ABC News staffers fumed at management for keeping a tight lid on coverage of the settlement. It was front page news everywhere, yet ABC doesn't report on itself, the source lamented. Of course, it's a conflict of interest. You could make a statement on your own behalf, that's fine, but reporting on yourself, conflict of interest. 3 sources told the Post that morale is down after a series of layoffs in all departments. The settlement is another gut punch. It's sheer level embarrassment. People are furious. Well, I'm having a good time, huh? The settlement was announced just a day after a judge ruled that Stephanopoulos and Trump had to sit for...
I'm thrilled about the settlement. I think I've been talking in recent videos about how there never seems to be any consequences for flat out lying on news networks. So hopefully this perks people up a little bit to stop lying. And for stupid George Stephanopoulos to be humiliated and apoplectic, George, would you want to be called a grapist when you weren't? Would anyone? Forget about Donald Trump. Would anyone? I'd have a big problem with that. And guys, he deactivated his X account. What a loss for society, you know? Anyway, let's get back to the video.
Depositions in the case. The depositions were scheduled for this week. Quote, "This wasn't a news division decision. It was a company decision," one of the sources speculated, adding, "They likely didn't want to go through discovery. When you search all the documents and all the emails and find everything that's said and turn it over to the other side." Indeed. But I got to tell you, it's more than just that. I mean, discovery usually is scary for these companies because, man, are you going to find some dirt? It's cost-benefit analysis. So there's something called errors and omissions insurance that you need, or media insurance, depending on however people describe it. But the idea is if you make a mistake and you get sued, well, you need insurance to cover it. And when you have this insurance, then if you get sued, the insurance company is the one who has to pay. Often in these insurance contracts, these term agreements, they actually say that they can make the decision to settle on your behalf. So I think what actually happened is that ABC News' insurance company was looking at the cost of the lawsuit, and they said, if you lose this, we, the insurance company, are going to have to pay a lot of money. So they basically cut their losses. Now, the interesting thing is ABC News is going to fight this. The insurance company is going to cover the cost. The insurance company, in my opinion, this is what happened. The insurance company said the risk is high. Discovery doesn't matter for the insurance company. The risk of losing was high. Defamation per se, it was false. Trump was going to get a hefty settlement, or a hefty payout in judgment, I should say. So they opted for this settlement. The network and Stephanopoulos released a joint statement. ABC News and George Stephanopoulos regret statements regarding President Donald J. Trump made during an interview by George Stephanopoulos with Rep. Nancy Mason, ABC's This Week on March 10th, 2024. Last year, a Manhattan jury, blah, blah, blah. We get it, we get it, we get it. Now, I'm for it. I don't know why anybody would argue otherwise. And we have this hubbub over at Mediaite. CNN's Scott Jennings says, I don't frankly have a problem with Trump suing news organizations. Notice the 3,301 comments in response to this. These companies, they're losing their minds over accountability. Sue them, Trump, into oblivion. And now, as many of you may have heard, Trump is suing Ann Seltzer. So this one's particularly funny. I don't actually know where he goes with this one and how this one plays out.
If you like watching videos like this one, like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the video.
I do want to play that clip from CNN in a second. But Trump is suing Iowa pollster Ann Seltzer and the Des Moines Register newspaper. Seltzer published a poll days before the election that said Kamala Harris was ahead by 3 points. Trump won by 13. So I'm curious what his argument's going to be. Trump sues Ann Seltzer, her polling firm, the Des Moines Register, and the newspaper's parent company, Gannett, accusing them of consumer fraud, according to a copy of the filing reviewed by NBC News. In the suit filed Monday night in Polk County, Iowa, says it seeks accountability for brazen election interference. This is interesting. I wonder if the Trump camp thinks that they can grab in discovery some evidence that the news in Des Moines, the news organization, knew what they were saying was false. That will be interesting. If they actually get Ann Seltzer privately saying she doesn't believe the results and the Des Moines Register, the same thing, there could be an argument. Trump won the state by double digits, a difference that his lawyers argue in the suit constitutes election interfering fiction. Trump is making the claim under Iowa Consumer Fraud Act, which prohibits deceptive advertising. Quote, I'm doing this because I feel I have an obligation to. I'm going to be bringing one against the people in Iowa, their newspaper, which had a very, very good pollster who got me right all the time, and then just before the election said I was going to lose by 3 or 4 points. Seltzer announced after the election that she would stop polling political contests and move on to other ventures. When the Register published the Seltzer poll, Trump had been widely expected to win the state. The survey of 808 likely Iowa voters found Harris with 47 to Trump's 44, which is insane because when you track the trends of Iowa over the past 10 years, you could see a major shift towards the Republican Party. It was so laughable that people posted this meme where a gothic chick was sitting in a tractor, and it was like Iowa, according to Ann Seltzer, probably. A very funny meme. Defendants and their cohorts in the Democrat Party hoped that the Harris poll would create a false narrative of inevitability for Harris in the final week of the 2024 election. Shortly before the poll's release, a possible leak predicted its findings, prompting an internal probe. Now, here's the best part. Apparently, Kamala Harris's internal pollings had shown the entire time that she was behind Trump and wasn't going to win. Well, here's the clip from Mediaite. Let's bring on the whinging.
Not only does Donald Trump have money, he has money with the RNC.
Yeah, that lawsuit against Ann Seltzer is interesting because in defamation suits, the biggest hurdle, to the best of my understanding, is being able to prove that someone knew that they were lying. I think a lot of the election polls are left-leaning, and it's so funny. I always talk about the left's projection. But when the left was running out of Nazi and Hitler names to call Trump, I remember them saying, because one poll, had Trump winning a certain state or multiple states or something, and it was kind of an outlier. And they were like, I wonder if this is the Republicans manipulating these numbers to discourage Kamala Harris voters. When, in my opinion, even the Harris campaign has acknowledged they knew she was never going to win. And you see stuff like this in Iowa. I think the left is projecting their own scummy tactics onto the right. I have no evidence for 100%, but so many polls were so wrong and are always wrong in all these elections, and they're always wrong in one direction. So I think they engage in these tactics. I think improving it will be tough, but like Tim said, I love the discovery phase of all these things because maybe the Trump campaign knows something that we don't, and there's something in discovery that they're really, really scared of. That's another thing that should discourage all of these news organizations from continuing their lying ways. As Tim mentioned, discovery is a nightmare for these organizations because think about it. We all know they lie constantly. So if they have to show all their cards, you know there's a lot that would come out that would be definitive evidence of how dirty they are. Not that we need any, but that should terrify these companies. So I love that he's doing this. And you know what? If they stop lying all the time, they don't have anything to worry about. And if this Ann Seltzer didn't do anything wrong, she has nothing to worry about. These news organizations just hate accountability, don't they? It's so funny. It is nice to see the tide turning a little bit. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
He has money with his super PACs, and his money has money. Look at all of the tech billionaires that are around him now. There is an indefinite amount of money. And I believe wholeheartedly that the Des Moines Register, very much like ABC Disney, is going to capitulate. And I believe that Donald Trump has actually figured out a way how to change the way that media deals with issues, whether it's
Are you worried at all about this, Scott? Just where it could go, not just the Donald Trump of it all, but I mean, if he's creating precedent, it's for everybody.
Well,
Yep.
when you introduce
Cry more.
Michael, you use the word narratives, and I think one of the reasons Republicans are cheering on this muscular attitude from Trump and pushing back against some of this is because Republicans feel like constantly media organizations, especially in the throes of campaigns, work overtime to create false narratives that may shape the contours of the election. Look what happened. When this poll came out in Iowa, the entire English-speaking world was talking about the gold standard pollster, and Harris has this momentum. And ultimately what we were told was complete garbage. And if you talk to pollsters at the time, they would have told you, this is not real. This methodology is not good anymore. But that's not what people chose to run with because it fit what most people in the press wanted the narrative to be. So he's pushing back on that. I don't, frankly, have a problem with it. And if they capitulate, it's because they don't want to go through the discovery and what that might show.
You're a
Yeah. We had Ryan Gerdusky on Timcast IRL last week.
Yeah, Scott Jennings is right. They ignore narratives that don't work with theirs, and they choose narratives that do. And by the way, who's still listening to Michael Cohen? Does anyone care what he has to say? But we want to hear from you. What do you all think about Donald Trump suing these news organizations and holding them accountable? Do you think it's a good thing, or do you think it's sets a bad precedent? Let us know. Anyway, as always, really appreciate you watching, and we will see you on the next one.